Last time, I promised you the story of the hardest week of my life, and I told you honestly that I'm not ready to tell it yet. But I also told you why I wanted to go somewhere else first, because when that week finally hit me, I wasn't standing there alone. And I don't just mean the brothers in my small group, or my wife, or my friends. I mean that there were prayers already in place around my life, prayers that had been going up for decades, long before I knew I'd need them. So before I tell you about that week, I want you to meet the man who had been standing in the gap for me for years. This is the story behind a song I wrote called A Faithful Prayer. Welcome back to the For His Glory podcast. I'm Solomon, and I'm honored you'd listen to my story. Before I go any further, one note. This episode touches a hard place from my past, including a fleeting dark thought that crossed my mind. I'll handle it gently, but I want you to know it's coming. And if you're in that place today, there's a line of help in the description. Please use it. Your story isn't over. Now let me tell you about an elder I'll call Rajan Uncle. In the culture I grew up in, I'm the son of South Indian immigrants. We call every elder uncle or auntie, whether they're blood related or not. It's a title of respect and affection. It's how we honor the people who came before us and carried us, related or not. Rajan Uncle prayed for me from my youth, but the first time I can remember him intentionally praying that I would receive the baptism of the Holy Spirit, I was 16. If you've heard the earlier episodes, you know I grew up in the Pentecostal church, wanting the baptism of the Holy Spirit, watching everyone around me receive it, and going home without it, year after year, until I quietly decided it wasn't for me. What I didn't tell you is what that felt like at 16, standing at the altar with my hands raised and the fire not falling. It wasn't just disappointment, it was shame. Some part of me had decided I was unworthy of it, that there was something in me, some deficit, that was keeping God at arm's length. My sense of my own worth was in the basement, and I believed the lies my own heart was telling me about who I was. And there was this elder, Rajan Uncle, who would not stop praying for me. He kept speaking my name to God. He wanted me to have the joy I was watching everyone else step into. He wanted me in the refiner's fire. There's a man in the New Testament named Epaphras, and Paul says of him that he was always laboring in prayer for the people he loved. That was Rajan Uncle. Fervent, faithful, planting seeds in a boy who had no idea yet what God could do with him. And when the fire didn't fall that day, he just kept praying anyway. Years later, I was in my second year of medical school, and step one was coming. If you know medicine, you know what that exam is. It can feel like the whole of your future balanced on one single test. My practice scores were falling, and I was carrying something heavier than the test. I felt I had to carry my family's name. My parents had sacrificed so much to get me there. I felt I had to keep them standing tall, no matter what it cost me. So I kept breaking down on the inside while trying to look fine on the outside. And one night it got very dark. I was trembling on the couch, overwhelmed by a fear I couldn't reason my way out of. And into that moment came a thought that was not mine. A thought about harming myself, about a knife in the kitchen. I want to be clear about this because it matters. It was a foreign thought, and I rejected it the instant it came. My spirit resisted it, but it frightened me to my core that it had come at all. I didn't know how to pray. I just went to sleep in the silence, empty, not knowing that anything was happening on the other side of that silence at all. And then, at 5:30 a.m., my phone rang. It was my father, and his voice was shaking. He said, "Son, I had the worst dream of my life. I'm coming to get you. He had gotten in the car, and he had not come alone. He brought my mother, he brought our pastor, and he brought Rajan uncle, the same elder who had prayed over me in my youth. They drove to my apartment, the place where that shadow had crept in, and they came and got me. I packed my books and went home. And by grace, not by my own strength, but by the hand of God, I finished. I took the exam, I made it through, I passed, I matched into radiology. God closed the door on the darkness and opened doors into the day. Now fast forward again. Years later, I'm a resident in Dallas, and there's a woman named Sharon living with her parents in Phoenix. We had been talking for months, from about July to October of 2012, praying about each other, talking late into the night, Skyping across the distance between Texas and Arizona, trying to build something real and do it the right way. In October, I flew to Phoenix to see her in person for the first time and to meet her parents. And my actual plan, my nervous, careful plan, was to ask her father for permission to date her. I had my heart in my throat. I genuinely did not know if I'd get his blessing. But here's something you should know about South Indian culture. Dating, as most people think of it, doesn't really exist. So when I met her father, I gathered my courage and I told him I liked Sharon. And he looked at me and asked, "When's the engagement?" I was taken aback. I had come to ask permission to date her, and her father had skipped straight to the wedding. And in that moment, I remembered a conversation I'd had back in medical school. I'd gone to a friend named Michael Q. He's a successful orthopedic surgeon in Chicago now. Because he was already married, and honestly, I didn't know what real love was supposed to look like. And Michael told me something I'll never forget. He said, love isn't a feeling, it's a choice. He pointed me to Christ on the cross, how he could have called down 10 legions of angels and walked away from an anguish he never deserved. But instead, he stayed because he chose us. Love is a choice. Love is sacrifice. So I stood there in front of her father, holding that question, when's the engagement? And I looked at Sharon, and she nodded. She was okay with setting a date. And after everything of the last few months, all the talking, all the praying, all the getting to know her, I made a decision in my heart. Not just that I felt something for her, but that I would choose to love this woman for the rest of my life. It was as if God had written the ending before I ever got up the nerve to ask the question. And then came the part I could have never scripted. Because it turned out that Sharon's aunt, her father's own sister, was married to Rajan uncle, the elder who prayed for me at 16, the elder who showed up at my apartment at one of the darkest moments of my life. He was already family. He had been family before I ever knew Sharon's name. Honestly, I should have connected it sooner. Sharon's father is one of 10 siblings. It's a big family. And I'd mostly known it through a different branch of it. Her cousin Staben, through another of her dad's siblings, happens to be my best friend. So the web was already there. I just hadn't traced it all the way to Rajan uncle in the midst of everything that was going on. But here's what I only learned later. When Sharon's father was deciding what to make of me, he did what fathers in our culture do. He made a call to vet me. And the person he called was Rajan uncle, the one man in that whole family who knew the most about me, who knew my past, my struggles, the darkest night of my life, every one of my shortcomings. That's the man who got asked, should my daughter marry him? And Rajan uncle hyped me up. He didn't hedge. He didn't list my failures, though he knew them better than anyone. The elder who had been praying for me then spoke grace over me at the exact moment it decided my future. The one man with every reason to name my failures chose instead to cover them. A small picture of the gospel itself, delivered over a phone call. So look at what this one man's prayers touched. The altar when I was 16. the doorway of that apartment when I was falling apart in med school, and the father-in-law's chair in Phoenix when I was too nervous to speak. And here's the thing about that boy at the altar, the one who decided the fire wasn't for him. At 40 years old, in the story I told you a couple of episodes ago, the spirit finally fell. Tongues of fire on the very tongue I had held back all those years. And soon after that moment, I thought about the elder, every prayer he'd prayed. And I understood something. Every not yet had been a soon that the Father was holding. The fire didn't skip me at 16. It was on its way the whole time. I wrote the song A Faithful Prayer for Rajan Uncle, and the honest truth is, he may not even fully know what his prayers did. That's how it usually works with the faithful ones. They sow, and they don't always get to see the harvest. So if that's you, if you're the one quietly praying for someone who doesn't seem to be changing, speaking a name to God year after year with nothing visible to show for it, I want you to hear this. The prayer you prayed years ago, heaven did not forget. It isn't lost. It's incense still rising. And the harvest may be further down the road than you'll ever see, but it's coming. This is the For His Glory podcast. I'm Solomon, and to the men and women in the gap, like my Rajan uncle, thank you for laboring for His glory. To learn more, visit solomoncharian.com. A Faithful Prayer is part of my album, Cord of Three Strands, and you can find it on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, and everywhere else you stream, and it's linked right here in this episode. And if this episode touched something heavy in you, the helpline in the description is there for a reason. Please don't carry it alone. God bless you.